Ladies, gentlemen, and other bipedal humanoids, welcome to the 13th Annual Chautauqua Park Open Round 1 Front 9 Feature Card, brought to you by Copiah Collision Center. Huge thank you to them for sponsoring the tournament. And we're going to jump right into Hole 1 here at Chautauqua Park in Crystal Springs, Mississippi. Hole 1, par 3, about 250 feet. This is the brand new pin position because the original position, as we'll see here to the left, there's some construction going on. It was basically wiped off the map. So we have a dogleg right, brought to you by another dogleg right. So the drone is taking its sweet time, but taking its time nonetheless down this fairway. So you want if you're a lefty, you're basically just throwing a hyzer the whole way. Nice little soft putter, probably a pig or zone or toro, whatever you want to throw that's overstable, and we'll just go hold that hyzer line the whole time. There is the backhand turnover line, but that's a little bit riskier. You do have the chance of running OB over that fence. There's OB long through the water, but nobody's going to throw that far, and if you do, that kind of sucks. So all right, up first, Silas Shultz, sponsored by Discmania. I don't know their bag, so I'm just gonna guess at whatever they're throwing. Throwing a high hyzer, and unfortunately we don't have catch cam footage, so we can't really see where this goes. But he's got to look at the basket from where he landed, if I recall, probably about 50 feet. Up next, local pro Chad Sherbert, sponsored by Millennium Discs. Probably throwing a toro here, and I think this landed in a pretty decent spot. And as you can hear, the rain is coming down. Thunder Shultz, older brother of Silas, also sponsored by Discmania. You see him lining up this forehand. In the trees, still getting a great shot though. Chad having a great time, having a great laugh at his expense. So. And finally, rounding up the card, Mason Mckay, taking no time, throwing a shot. Great shot, by the way. Nice and flat with nice overstable finish. So here we see Chad lining it a little bit straight, actually. Giving a nice run to the basket and filling up with a tap-in par. Here we see Silas. He ended up about 50 feet away. He's got a pretty obstructed look at the basket. You see all these little tiny spindly trees. But still giving it a great run. That was more like 40 feet. Here we got Thunder with his look at birdie. Good idea in this rain. Oh, just a little bit low, but he'll also have a tap in. And Mason going very long on this. This would be a pretty decent shot for the original position, which was just down there by that orange fence to the left. This never really had the height, but he'll also end up with a par, so Silas for his comeback. No worries there. And rest of our card probably tapping in their pars. I'd be amazed if anybody missed this, but I have been known to miss worse, so, you know, these things happen. Chad making his tester there. And Silas Thunder, sorry, tapping in his par. Moving on to hole 2. Hole 2, par 3. This is probably the signature hole for this course. This is just a beautiful, beautiful hole. Here you see a little bridge, and then here we're coming over the am pad, and boom, there's the pin. OB all the left side. Basically where you see the grass stop growing is the OB line, and then in coverage we'll see flags and a painted line. But this is a tough shot. This is a par 3, probably about 280 feet. Most of our players probably going to throw the forehand. There is the turnover line, which is a little bit riskier, but definitely playable. Silas Shultz up first, throwing the forehand, throwing really high. And he will be about 15 feet from the basket. This was a great shot. There's Chad. Looks like he's got his rhino in hand. And just laying up to the corner. There you see all those OB flags. Under, lining up the forehand. Throwing high and wide, hoping to crash in. And unfortunately a little bit too wide, and it will end up OB. There's no drop zone, so you basically just take it from wherever it went out. So he will move up to about where Chad is. Here's Mason. Just not overstable enough. Throws way too straight and will end up in this same spot where Thunder Chad. Chad giving this a nice, safe run. He'll have an easy 3 there. Thunder throwing something a bit overstable, giving this a nice run. He'll end up right next to the basket for his bogey. Never really had the chance. It was way too overstable, but he'll have a pretty easy bogey putt here. Silas tapping in his birdie. Chad tapping in his par. And the rest of our cards tapping in their bogeys.
From our angle, it looked like he's going to be right here.
Yeah, Chad talking about Silas' shot. We thought it was going to be way closer to that gazebo there. And moving on to hole 3, par 3. I believe this is a 280-foot shot. Definitely plays a lot longer than whatever the distance is, because it's going to be uphill the entire way. You have the initial gap there to hit, and then you have the secondary gap that we're coming up on. And what you want to throw is whatever shot will just go straight the whole time. So you'll probably want to flip something up with a little bit of hyzer. Or just throw something nice and flat. So we'll see what our players do here. Silas pulling this one way to the right. A little bit of a favorable kick there, to be honest. That if you get into those woods to the right, it is death in there. It's just a jail. So this tee pad was really slick, so that probably didn't help. Chad throwing something nice and understable. I believe this was his champion edition
beast.
All
arm instead of.
Yeah, talking about having no grip on the tee pad here. So he ended up in a pretty decent spot. He'll have a look at birdie from probably 25 feet. Thunder up now. Throwing way wide right.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
And getting a great result there.
That might be a football. I might have thrown airborne right there.
Thunder talking about having no footing there. And Mason. And I don't know if you could line this up
That's a shot of a married
any better than that without going in the basket. That is an amazing shot. We have Silas from probably about 80 feet. Oh, getting a nasty kick off that tree. Here we see Chad from probably 40-ish feet.
It's a mind bender.
Giving that a run, but seemed like it came out a little bit early there. Silas for his birdie par. Excuse me. Oh, giving that a great run. This looked scary, but it just curls up next to the basket, so it ended up being a pretty helpful roll. Thunder for his birdie. Taking his time. He always took his time, like run up, putt. He always made sure he got it right in his head, and he makes his birdie putt, so well worth it. Mason for his birdie. Beautiful, beautiful shot. Well deserved. Silas tapping in his bogey, unfortunately. And Chad for his par. No doubts there. Moving on to hole 4. Hole 4, par 4. This is somewhere around 600 feet. you've got this tiny, absolutely astronomically tiny gap here to hit. Low ceiling, low window. Oh my gosh, it's just trees everywhere, branches everywhere, leaves everywhere, vines everywhere, and if you get kicked down into that valley, you're in death because there's nothing but bushes and crap in your way. And then you get down to this nice open spot. So if you manage to get out to this open spot, it's basically a nice little soft nose up putter, no understable putter shot there. You got a forehand, and it's a safe run because the basket's in this little pocket here. And so if you just go straight at the basket and hit the hill, you'll be stopped. But it's that initial shot is the huge hurdle to overcome here. So let's see how we do. Thunder up first. Going for this very risky line,
wow.
It's so good.
but ended up in a great spot. Chat up now. And ring. No, probably can't sing that. I may get copyright strike if I do that. Just going right down the line, turning the whole way. This will end up in a pretty decent spot.
Yeah, I was like, I'll just go with it.
Talking about the slipping. Here's Mason. Not sure why Mason went up first. Oh, goodness. And he hit early and is in a nasty spot. Here's Silas. Absolutely line driving this down there. Beautiful shot. That's exactly what you want. Like, maybe past that tree that he lined up against, but I mean, what can you do? And here we have Mason in Death Valley. And I couldn't really follow where this went because there was a bunch of trees in the way, but he ended up in an okay spot. Here's Silas. And great camera work here. I decided to be on the back side of the hill so I couldn't see where the shot landed, but he ended up in a pretty decent spot. He'll have a look for his birdie. And here's Thunder. Nasty roll, but he'll have a birdie putt from 15-ish feet. Mason ended on in the bottom of that valley, so he'll have an approach to the basket. And I'm pretty sure that landed up on those rocks right where Silas was. Here's Chad with a great drive. A little bit of an unfortunate approach shot. He'll give himself a little bit of a tester. And yeah, here we see Mason ending up really wide. Jump putt. Unfortunately hitting that tree and knocking him down into the rocks. Chad for his birdie. All day, every day. Not a tester for Chad. Mason for his bogey. I believe this is for bogey. Yeah, all day. Mason, a very good putter. Despite not playing a whole lot, he's a very talented player. There we got Silas for his birdie. And the noise you hear was people teeing off on 18. 18, a very aceable hole, so somebody probably got pretty close. Silas hitting low basket. No roll, so thankfully he does have the par, but really be thinking about that one. Missing an easy putt like that. Ugh. Here we have Thunder for his birdie. All day. All right, moving on to hole 5. Hole 5, a par 3. I believe this is about a 340-foot shot, but it does play downhill, so a little bit shorter than that. And this has a bunch of stuff in the way, so there's no real straight shot to get to it. You have to throw a hyzer, either forehand or backhand. That's either left or right-handed, so, you know, an ambidextrous hole. But yeah, you see all these trees we're passing through. The drone's taking the real straight gap, which is tough to hit. But ideally, if you could hit this with a nice flat forehand and start fading out right around here, a little bit of a skip towards the basket would be ideal. But let's see how our players react. You got the wide hyzer around all the trees with the right-hand backhand, or you just go overstable forehand. So you see Thunder trying to pull this one over, but getting a little bit sneaky here. So he'll end up right in that Magnolia tree, right next to the basket. Chad going the right hand, trying to get around everything, but unfortunately hitting the tree, kicking right behind that big old pine tree right there. Silas Shultz, and up the forehand. And this unfortunately starts fading out way too early into that tree. If it just held that straight angle a little bit more.
Dude, my right knee
Silas
popped.
complaining about getting old. Mason throwing this out really nicely. And this will end up in a pretty decent spot for the birdie look.
Actually, it doesn't feel very good.
Here we have Chad, unfortunately hitting really, really early. Throwing a pretty nice approach shot. It's a little bit long in the basket. He's got maybe a 20-footer, maybe. There you can see the basket down there. Silas just jump putting at it. And he'll have a nice par putt. Or tap in, rather. We have Mason. Also jump putting at it, but fading out a little bit early, but not the worst result. He'll have a 15 or so footer for par. Here we have Thunder for birdie. From probably about 30 or so feet, but really obstructed. You can see his foot there in the Magnolia. That's where his disc landed. And giving this a good run, but just a little bit high. Chad for his par. I assume this was about 15 feet, but this is more like 20. Oh, left side chains. Here we have Mason from probably 5 feet or so closer. I don't know, pure guesstimate here. Making good on his par putt. Silas and Thunder to tap in theirs. Their pars, that is. And Chad for his unfortunate bogey. The only time I saw him not take time for his putt was with these tap-ins. Oh my gosh, moving on to hole 6, I believe. Par 3, probably only about 280 feet. But this is one of the toughest shots for right-handed players because it's basically a blind turnover shot. Either that or a forehand, but the forehand tends to fade into these trees a bit too much, so the backhand turnover shot for right-handed players is the usual play. And here you see it's just a basically left to right shot the whole way. Tons of guardian trees. There's a valley in between. So if it get knocked down to that valley, you got to really scramble for your par. So let's see what our players do. Thunder throwing the turnover backhand. Getting a little bit of a nasty kick there to the right, but he definitely has a look at the basket for a birdie putt. We have Silas. And this was turning a little bit too much. You see it land there on that hill. So he'll still have a look at the putt, at the birdie. Mason making a good correction from what Silas did. And he'll end up about 25 feet from the basket. Good look at it. And Chad basically following the Mason's line here. Ending up just a little bit closer. So all 4 good shots. We have Silas giving it a good run, but you see how obstructed it was and how uphill it is. Oh my gosh. Basically add 10 feet to whatever distance you're trying to throw. Here we have Mason from 50 or so feet with that uphill. Making it. Beautiful putt. Very well. Thunder just a little bit low. Here we have Chad for his birdie. All day. Very excited about that. Oh. Just an undercommitted putt. Unfortunate bogey. And Thunder tapping in his par. Moving on to hole 7. I believe that they have this as a par 4. I could be wrong. But hole 7, par 3/4? Question mark? Probably about 400 feet. You've got this initial gap between these trees. You've got this little spindly tree that you want to try and avoid. You've got this nice little valley. This is probably one of the prettiest courses in Mississippi, if not the prettiest, so highly recommend coming out to check out this course. There's not really a whole lot to say about this hole. You make the initial gap, get out into the open, throw your approach shot. Ideally, you try and smash it out to circle 1, circle 2, which is a tough shot, but here we have Mason. He turned this one over a little bit much, so he may end up in those the fortress trees there. And the rough on this course, I must mention, is very rough. Wow! And Chad just throwing a worm burner here. He did end up in a pretty decent spot. He'll have a nice approach to the basket. Thunder. Throwing a forehand. This ended up pretty short. I think he didn't quite get the distance he wanted from that shot. Here we have Silas up next. Can he bounce back? And I don't know if you heard that off his fingers, but I'm pretty sure you could see steam come off of his hand after that. Because he absolutely smashed this shot. Holy crap. Beautiful, beautiful shot. And this is a par 4, so he'll have a look at this eagle. Thunder for his approach shot. Unfortunately, leaving it a bit long. A bit too straight of a disc. Here we have Chad, ending up at the bottom of the hill, throwing his approach. And he'll end up with a pretty good look at his birdie from probably 10-15 feet.
Tomato. You ever had tomato sherbet?
And we missed Mason's approach because he was too fast for me. Silas eagle. Oh, very frustrated with that. Very frustrated with that attempt. But he'll have an easy birdie. Thunder, overcommitted, hitting the band. Chad tapping in his birdie. Thunder tapping in his par. Silas tapping in his birdie. And I believe that was a birdie from Mason? Yeah. So pretty slow start on the front 9 so far. Moving on. Hole 8? I think that's how math works. Yeah, hole 8, par 3. This is probably about 320 feet-ish. But it's a straight shot with just a fortress of trees on every side. If you're early in those fortress trees, you'll probably take a bogey. It's tough to get out, but you make that initial gap, put yourself in circle 1, easy peasy, right? Anybody can do it. Especially if your name is Mason. Just an absolutely amazing shot.
I thought you
Yeah,
it.
we thought it was we thought it was going to go straight through those 2 spindly trees, but he ended up in a great spot. Here's Chad, turning this over a little bit much, but he made the gap, so he'll have a putt for birdie up there. Silas getting a nice throw out here. He'll end up in a pretty decent spot for his birdie putt. Thunder throwing a good shot, but getting a really unfortunate kick here from those two little guardian trees. He'll end up not in the worst possible spot. He does have a look at the basket, but not ideal. And then you see his birdie bid go just a little bit over the basket. Silas making his birdie putt. Chad to follow. Two great putts back to back. Thunder for his par. About 10 feet or so. Probably shorter. And Mason to tap in his birdie. Hole 3 and hole 8, he's got it dialed. Moving on to hole 9. Hole 9, par 3. This is, I'm going to say 350 feet, but really, really tight gap initially, and then prolonged. So, just a tight gap the whole way. And then here so basically just don't hit trees, get it straight through, you know. This course really, really rewards people that can throw straight shots, regardless of right hand, left hand, forehand, backhand. Just throw a straight shot and you'll be in a good position. But if you hit these trees, you'll be in a tough par save land. And Mason obviously dialed with these good straight shots. End up probably about 15 feet. Chad turning this over a little bit too much, and you see a kick there to the left down into the valley, so he's in scramble mode now. Silas, I think hit a tree and still kicked into a good spot, so there you see he has probably a 10-footer. And here's Thunder throwing something a little bit too nose up and fading her. Oh, but getting a nice kick. And he'll end up on the edge of that there cliff there. Cliff there. So he'll have a look at the birdie, but probably not going to make it. Chad. Decent approach, left it a little bit too short. Here we see Thunder. Got to tap in 3. Out of position, that's all you can hope for. Here we see Chad from probably about 20 feet, but you see he has to lean out a little bit to get around some trees. And there you go. Saving the 3. Mason for his birdie. No worries there. Silas for his birdie. And Thunder for his par. 2 birdies, 2 pars. Moving on to hole A. Not, in fact, hole 9, but hole A. This is a par 3. I think this is only about 150 feet. You've got basically a jump putt, especially if your name is Gannon Burr. You got a jump putt here. But there you see there's a little bit of a hump to get over, and then you see the basket. And then all around the basket is a sheer cliff that's only about 5 feet high, but still. If you go down there, you've got a little bit of a tough putt, especially with that elevation change. But yeah, hole A. Really, really short. This is the ace run hole for people playing casually. Mason jump putting it, leaving this pretty short. He'll probably have a 40 or so footer there. Silas also jump putting. A bit of a better line, but he'll start fading out and he'll end up at the bottom of that bowl there. And Chad giving this more of a throw than anything, but he'll also end up in that bowl. We got Thunder giving this a great line, and as we'll see, he is under the basket, literally under the basket. There you see it. That's his drive. That's amazing. Mason for his birdie look. All day. That is a absolute death putt.
I knew
Absolutely
that.
gorgeous. Great birdie, Mason. Silas for his birdie. Yep, no worries there. And Chad for his birdie. There you see he's basically putting straight up. So, star frame from our card, 192 feet is what the whole distance is. I was totally wrong. That's a stroke. Mason, or I'm sorry, Thunder using somebody else's disc. It's not his. You know, that's obviously a stroke. And that is the end of the front nine. Thank you for joining me. I hope you join me for the back nine, where we will continue at this beautiful, beautiful park. Yeah. Cheers and God bless.